the state of unemployment. 7% of Coloradans have lost their jobs in the last month. The state's known for years its unemployment system couldn't handle this, and it can't.
Let's try freedom again.
Conservatives demand that the governor reopen Colorado now.
I totally reject the contention that if the governor removes the mandates, that more people will die.
Next viewers have said this is a perfect time for the state to put people to work fixing roads. One big problem with that. And if you want your coworkers to think you're the greatest of all time, bring a goat to your next video call. How you can pull it off, help a nonprofit, and become an office legend if we ever go back to the office. Next. Think of 14 Coloradans that you know. One of them has lost their job in the last month. Depending on where you live, depending on what you do, there's a good chance that you know many more than that. But the state says that 7% of the workforce has filed for unemployment in the last month. The state system has been overwhelmed by a crush of 231,000 unemployment claims. It simply cannot handle the volume. And they've known that it couldn't for years. Here's Anusha Roy.
March 9th, the state saw 400 unemployment claims. March 16th, it jumped to 4,000, and by the 26th, there were more than 25,000. We started hearing from some of you about struggling to file claims because the system was inundated. So what happened? Handling an influx of claims is something the state has been working on for years. That includes through the last recession when the state saw another spike in people filing claims. After that, it continued to keep working on ways to make that process smoother and was close to a tech overhaul when the pandemic hit.
We essentially know that there's going to be some amount of pain involved in that.
MSU professor Steve Beatty says an influx like this will bring growing pains and highlight some old ones. Yesterday, we told you about a coding language created in 1960 called COBOL, occasionally laced throughout the system.
And the systems we create today will not be running in 40, 50, 60 years, which is exactly what we are experiencing now.
Through those rolling changes, very little of Colorado's system still relies on that old code, unlike other states. The crux of the problem is the volume, according to the Department of Labor.
Is COBOL issues delaying the processing of claims, and specifically, I think that's attributable to possibly the question about pandemic unemployment assistance. The answer to that question is no.
At its peak in January of 2009, there were 7,700 claims filed in a week. The state's daily average surpasses that now. It's why people are being asked to file claims based on their last name to space things out, while the state is creating an entirely new system for people to file for unemployment who couldn't before. So that new system, pandemic unemployment assistance, is essentially expanding who is going to be eligible for unemployment. One of the examples are our parents, who don't have childcare anymore, have to stay home with their kids, would be eligible under this new program. I know a lot of people are wondering, when is this going to be up and running? Today, the state said that they're going to give us a more definitive timeline over the next couple of days. But Kyle, they are hoping to get that up and running sooner rather than later.
Anusha, there were generous Next viewers who emailed in last night and said, oh, I used COBOL back in the day. I could come out of retirement and help.
Yeah, so we actually asked the state, do you need people to do that? And they said they are so thankful for people who are willing to lend a helping hand. They had one person come out of retirement who knows how to write this code, but they use it so rarely that they said for now, they are good. But they're very thankful, Kyle.
Yes, indeed, that they are. Anusha Roy, who also realized that today is sweater weather. There's a conservative political action committee that led a failed recall attempt against Governor Jared Polis, and they are now back. They have rebranded as Colorado Freedom Force, and they're asking Coloradans to sign a petition demanding that the Democratic governor open up the state now. Former Republican Senator Kevin Lundberg talked with me today about their effort.
What do the epidemiologists you're talking to tell you would happen if Colorado adopted the plan that you're talking about? A rough idea in terms of hospitalizations or additional deaths that would occur?
Well, let me tell you what we're talking about first, and that is that we're saying that the governor needs to take the mandates off so the people of Colorado can do what they think is best for their individual lives, for their families, for their businesses.
Have you talked to any public health experts to figure out how many additional hospitalizations and deaths would occur under your suggested plan?
Well, you're putting a presumption that it's going to greatly change the circumstances. I've talked to doctors who recognize that we were faced with a very critical question mark about 6 weeks ago. And so the governor took some pretty drastic actions. He had that authority to do it. I don't question that. I believe, though, that we've gone through enough of the process to understand that Colorado is not New York City.
Is there a particular reason why you have not reached out to a public health expert to ask them to assess the public health impact of your suggestion?
Kyle, I have talked to doctors. I haven't talked to public health directly, no. But I spent 14 years on a health committee in the legislature, and I'm very familiar with their ways and their processes. And as I say, I've had this discussion with several medical professionals. They are not the only ones who know what's happening, though. All of us, I'm sure, are at home, studying the particulars and the details and trying to work through all the inscrutable data points that are put out there. I've come to the conclusion that public health doesn't have all the answers.
That group's predecessor, which failed in its recall of Governor Polis, did manage to successfully collect the personal information of a lot of Coloradans. That's very valuable in political marketing. Lundberg says that is not what they are trying to do with this petition. You can see our entire unedited interview on the next YouTube channel. Let's take a look at the latest numbers from the state health department. As of this afternoon's update, 374 Coloradans are known to have died from COVID-19. Of the more than 8,600 confirmed cases, about 1,700 people had to be hospitalized, and we know that hundreds of them went home from the hospital. Almost 42,000 people in our state have been tested. Colorado's Anti-Defamation League said today that people who are comparing the stay-home order to the actions of the Nazis, quote, demean the lives and memories of millions who suffered at the hands of the Nazi regime. Republican House Minority Leader Patrick Neville had said that stay-home orders lead to a Gestapo-like mentality. The governor, who was Jewish, got emotional yesterday when he was asked about the Nazi rhetoric of his critics. The Immigration Detention Center in Aurora has released 8 people, 8 detainees who all have HIV. There's a lawsuit filed 24 hours ago trying to force the federal government to release immunocompromised people from the custody of that processing center. There are 6 more people mentioned in the lawsuit who are still there. ICE says 2 employees in Aurora have tested positive for COVID-19, but no detainees at this point. ICE won't talk about the lawsuit, but it did say that it is beginning to release detainees that are at highest risk. So how do we save American cities and towns from collapsing under the weight of the pandemic? Democratic Congressman Joe Neguse from Boulder County has an idea. Money. His idea is money. He wants to give them money. The idea, the bill, is $250 billion to go to communities.
Those cities that are taking steps to mitigate the economic damage that they are experiencing so that they can continue to serve their communities would be able to use these revenues, these funds rather, to backfill those expenses that they have incurred. So that could be employee back pay. It could mean any number of things.
Now, there are conditions. The money has to be used for costs associated with the pandemic, and it can only go to communities with fewer than 500,000 residents. So Denver, you're out. Aurora, Boulder, and Broomfield, who have all furloughed employees in the last couple of days, they would be eligible for those funds. So fewer people driving to work means fewer people buying gas these days, and that means less gas tax revenue for CDOT to use to repair our roads. While many next viewers were thinking this would be the perfect time to get out there and stimulate the economy through some infrastructure projects, actually CDOT's looking at perhaps canceling projects that road crews were counting on for income. Here's Marshall Zellinger.
It's hard to think of road construction when it's snowing and fewer cars are on the road. It's also hard to think of road construction with fewer dollars being spent on gas. During an online meeting today, we found out CDOT believes it will be $50 million short over the next 3 years just on gas tax.
The bottom line is that we're looking at nearly $100 million in cuts over the next year and nearly $250 million cuts over the next few years.
Projects like the future widening of 270 could be delayed. The project list is long, with the money uncertain. There are 5 projects that are supposed to be underway soon, but could also get put on hold. Adding shoulders and repaving Highway 17 in the San Luis Valley, a $32 million project with a local construction company with 65 workers. Then there's the Pueblo interchange of US 50 and Purcell Boulevard, a $42 million project that is supposed to be done by Rye, Colorado-based Kirkland Construction and 100 employees.
We intend on keeping our employees working with the certain hope that, well, the definite hope that we would be able to get this job and it would go forward. There's nothing on the radar of where we would even go at this point.
It was one of the sort of failures we had was that we didn't deal with creating sustainable revenue when the economy was good and people felt comfortable.
Democratic Representative Matt Gray heads up the House Transportation Committee in the legislature, which annually struggles to solve the state's road funding shortfall.
Day-to-day medical care seems, more important than long-term infrastructure finance.
This is the part where I get to sound smarter than I really am. It's not just the gas tax. It's something called certificates of participation. The legislature gave CDOT $500 million each year for 4 years, and right now they're in year 2. But that requires the state treasurer to issue certificates of participation, basically taking state-owned buildings, selling them, signing a lease so that we get money up front, we start to pay back that lease, and then we get the buildings after so many years. But that money right now is not there for CDOT to use, and it's possible, Kyle, the state legislature could change the rules on that bill from a few years ago and get rid of the money CDOT thought it was going to get over the next few years.
Yeah, I think you've told us this, Marshall. We don't know what the impact on the state budget is going to look like, but every time we get an estimate, it's this just cascade of terribleness.
It's now $7 billion over the next 3 years, and that number we were talking about that was $2 billion next year is now up to $3.2 billion for next year and the year after. They're starting to combine numbers.
All right, Marshall Zelinger, who also got the sweater memo today. We're all very much in tune. Thank you, Marshall. I have shared with you here that becoming a dad has made me more optimistic, but I am still certainly not an optimist. And if we're being honest, that has served me pretty well so far in the pandemic. Because if you expect the worst, and then the worst happens, at least you were right. And I understand that that is a terrible way to go through life. But speaking of terrible ways to go through life, you've been wearing sweatpants for 17 days in a row, and you're watching a guy who broadcasts from his basement. So stuff's not ideal right now. Anyway, that is a very long way of getting around to reinforcing a point that I really hope has sunk in. There's not a lot of optimism as I see it right now for where Colorado stands on the testing that the state says we need before we can reopen society. Now, it's possible that some miracle solution is going to come out of nowhere. It is possible that the state will decide to lower its standards on the testing needed in order to reopen the economy. Or it's possible that we really need to stop fixating on April 26th or April 30th as the date that the stay-home order gets lifted. Because if there's no testing solution in sight, then there's no end date in sight. And I understand that that is not an ideal mindset. But ideal was several pairs of sweatpants and many basement broadcasts ago. You can still download Next virtual backgrounds for your next Zoom call, but a nonprofit has an even better idea. Surprise your coworkers with a live goat. Just one. If you want a ton, you have to head for the hills.
Here's this little straggler. You better join your buddies. You better join your crew, little fella.
We have surrendered the streets to animals, and it's awesome. Next.
beautiful snowy April day. The snow coming to an end tonight. Temperatures will drop like a rock. It's going to be downright icy out there with lows going into the mid-teens. Our high today at 33, nowhere near the average of 61, but we're trending in the right direction as we move into the weekend. As the storm begins to move south and east, the snow will decrease from north to south. Clear skies tonight, a sunny day tomorrow, and temperatures will be a bit warmer. Cloudy and 16 with the snow coming to an end by 11 o'clock tonight. Tomorrow with sunshine, our high at 47. 50s and 60s for the weekend with a chance for a few showers Tuesday and Wednesday, but also the middle part of next week. Highs back close to 70 degrees. Now that's more like it.
Meteorologist Corey Reppenhagen is once more haiku deep in snow today.
Corey Reppenhagen is on the Weather Beat.
Upslope delivers one season, 12 feet of snow. Where are my snowshoes?
That was Corey Reppenhagen on the Weather Beat.
You know what would really spice up your company's next video meeting? Goats. You know why this show isn't very good? Lack of goats. Let's fix both things at once.
Click the little video sign. Can you see that?
Zoom meetings have just become so monotonous. We've been doing them every single day.
Can anybody hear me?
It becomes a little boring for some Zoom meetings. Hello, I'm Michelle Graham. I'm the executive director of the Urban Farm at Stapleton. The Urban Farm is a nonprofit community farm. So I think the key word right now for every organization is pivot. So moving towards online. Some things that the Urban Farm is doing, of course, we started a fundraising platform, but we also have Zoom to Tough. So Zoom to Tough, TUF is short for the Urban Farm.
I hope. You've always been my favorite.
So the idea is that corporations, families, organizations can make a donation and actually have a virtual tour of the farm or a cameo with a goat or a sheep.
That's Pepper.
Pepper. Are you a good Pepper?
Hi, Pepper.
Zoom to Tough meetings are full of laughter, smiles, goat noises, baby sheep, neighing, all the noises of the farm. We have some really cute animals out there, Nigerian dwarf goats, baby lambs, miniature horses. Who doesn't love a baby goat? Yeah, it's just a real blast to get everyone involved and walking around with us at the farm as if they're there.
You'd be a legend if you could pull it off. Colorado Parks and Wildlife says that it is too early to tell if animals are behaving differently because us humans are behaving differently.
Check these bros out.
So, Idaho Springs, you tell me, is this just business as usual in town, or does any of this seem different to you? Pack of bros thicker than a Lodo strolling through Idaho Springs on Wednesday. Brandy took us this video near 12th in Colorado. If you see animals doing what you think are weird things, send that to us, basically because we're bored and we want to see. So, about yesterday's dug-up headstone, the veteran's family got in touch and they would like it. And they're not the only ones. That and your feedback next. An update on the story that we brought you last night about the Coloradan who uncovered a headstone in his garden in Gun Barrel. The family of World War II vet Alexander Shaw got in touch with us. They said that they would, in fact, like that headstone, which appears to have been scrapped because it had a flaw. The veteran has a separate headstone in the cemetery. The government also contacted us to say that that headstone is government property and they want it back. So this is the point where we just kind of back right up and let that homeowner and the family and the VA sort this out amongst themselves. Not our business anymore. Becky in Broomfield says, Kyle, God love you for being the forever pessimist, but have to tell you broadcasting from your basement is better than you broadcasting from your mom's basement. I miss my mom, but no, this basement's just fine. And a text, sorry, Kyle, you're not a sweater guy. What, just because I got the physique of a spilled bowl of oatmeal? Come on. I'll see you next time.